We need a hashtag, a brief history of the 2008 housing bubble. Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
So that boom was different, fueled by loose lending that enabled individuals to speculate on home prices by racking up mortgages they could repay only if home prices kept climbing. The money party ended a few years later when home prices stopped rising. The ensuing crash wiped out $11 trillion in U.S. household wealth and brought the global financial system to the brink of collapse. And actually, Nash, that brings us to chart number 1, which is home prices year over year growth back from 1982 up until now. As you can see, 2000 they said they're going up, and then 2008 they took a free fall.
A bit of a housing crisis started in 2007, don't you see?
like, have we learned nothing?
No, and that was actually pretty well speculated. In what book was it? Was it Too Big to Fail? It may have been that. I think it was that book. Whereas essentially the author speculated the exact same thing was going to happen again that happened because nothing actually changed to fix it.
Yeah.
The banks allowed this loose lending to happen, were given money to bail out just because if they weren't, the economy would have tanked even harder. They did it under the assumption that they would stabilize the lending a bit more so that it wouldn't happen, but there's never any written agreement. Because that gets into a politically tricky issue with how you want to think about it. Because some people blame the U.S. government for doing that because the banks got off scot-free. But also, it's important to consider that if nothing had happened, it would have been much, much worse.
It probably, you know what? You're probably right. It probably would have been. It probably would have been much, much worse. But the recovery. The inevitable recovery would have been so much better, and it would have stayed longer. Like now, they essentially just use the term "kick the can down the road." At least some people speculate that they're just making the eventual crash, which is going to happen or potentially going to happen now, way, way, way worse than what it would have been back in 2008.
Well, see, I'm not sure about that because I think you're assuming that there would have been something to salvage or there would have been enough to salvage. I don't think I'm on the boat where I don't think there would have been enough to salvage if those banks had gone under for the U.S. economy. It would have been much better if they had given those banks an agreement to actually, stabilize the lending so that people don't buy houses that they can't afford.
Yeah.
But they genuinely had to do something. And it wasn't, as we're seeing now, it wasn't the best thing to do. But without it, I think it would have gotten so bad that we would be living in a much, 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 much different country.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in 2008, it crashed. It was really bad for a while. And then financiers, it's a great word, financiers, stepped in starting in 2011 and gobbled up foreclosed homes at steep discounts. They dispatched buyers to courthouse auctions with duffel bags of cash. Wow. A whole duffel bag. Smartphones and tablet computers enabled them to orchestrate the land grab and manage tens of thousands of far-flung properties thereafter. It accounted for about a third of sales in some markets and setting a floor for falling prices. So essentially, they bought up all the houses, and I guess that saved the market. Is that what I'm getting here, Nash?
It just meant that they owned it. But, I mean, yeah, it kind of did because now you're putting money in other pockets, but...
Yeah, it's set a floor, which means to me means it's stopped falling. We could go back up now. Like we hit bottom.
Yeah. Yes.
So strung by losses, banks made it harder for regular home buyers to get a mortgage. Millions of Americans went underwater, owning more owing more on their mortgages than their homes were worth and unable to move. Home rental firms, including Innovation Homes Incorporated and Americans Homes for Rent, the number 4, thrived. Renting suburban homes proved to be so profitable that landlords hit the open market and added properties at full price once foreclosures dried up. Many now build houses explicitly to rent. And that brings us to today with COVID.
Yes.
So that's what happened in 2008, and that's pretty much how it was salvaged. Now, financiers bought and got up the houses. So, but who were those people who bought the houses? Wasn't the banks? Was it just everyday like people who could afford it? It wasn't wealth funds.
No, I don't think it was.
Who bought the houses back in 2008, 2011? Excuse me.
I think it had more to do with the banks buying them.
So the banks bought the houses.
Yes, I believe.
But they didn't buy. But they probably didn't buy them to rent. They probably bought them to sell.
Yeah, they bought it just to hold on to it because nobody else is going to buy it because nobody else could afford it.
Okay, so let's compare and contrast that to today with what's projected to happen with Wall Street buying them. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun.